Hello, everyone, and welcome to round 4 of the US Chess Championship. It's very intense, and it is Sam Shankland versus Hans Niemann. Sam already won the US Chess Championship in 2018. He finished ahead of Fabi, ahead of Wesley, ahead of Levon, but Hans really wants that title. So it's a pretty crazy game, and before we get into it, I don't know if you guys heard, but the new, whatever it's called, the Federation of Planets World Championship, the fast-paced one, will be offering 2 candidate spots for the next candidates tournament. So by playing it, you will be able to qualify for the candidates tournament. Now, I don't know what you guys feel about that. I just think it's a little bit weird. Only if maybe if they shorten the time control for the candidates tournament and also for the World Chess Championship match, but then it kind of loses the point. So not really sure what FIDE is trying to accomplish by this. I know they're trying to cater to younger audience, and okay, you have to grab that share of the market as well. But I just think that, if we are to continue having classical World Chess Championships, we have to play sort of under the same rules that Capablanca played, Alechin played, Fischer played. Yes, there were little tweaks over time, but yeah, I mean, you cannot have a classical World Chess Championship match or in a time control of 60 minutes or 45 minutes plus increment. So, it's hard to say what the future holds, but it will be interesting, no doubt about that. So yeah, getting back to the game, Sam opens with pawn to d4. We have knight to f6 by Hans, pawn to c4, pawn to e6, we have knight to c3, and Hans goes for the Nimzo-Indian defense, as does everyone else when faced with knight to c3, because what else would you play? I mean, it's the best opening for black. Pawn to e3, we have castles, bishop to d3, the so-called bishop attack against the Nimzo, pawn to d5, captures, and pawn to a3. We have bishop back to d6 and queen to c2. So a pretty standard setup where you most often see c6, sometimes a6, sometimes b6, but Hans goes for the immediate knight to a6. And this is very interesting what happens next. Look at this, knight f3, pawn to c5. We have castles, kingside, pawn to c4. Okay, nothing new here. Bishop to e2, and now knight to c7, preparing knight to b5, or rather a6 and b5. Of course, we have pawn to a4, stopping this idea of advancing the pawn to b5. But now Hans just brings the knight back, knight to a6, as now b4 has been weakened, and Hans wants to get his knight to b4. And then maybe, bishop f5, knight b4, knight to d3, already looking like something white should not allow. We have pawn to b3, knight to b4, attacking the queen, queen b1, c captures on b3, queen captures, and now there are a couple of games where pawn to a5 was played. Here Hans goes for the immediate bishop to f5, and it is now, as of move 15, that we have a completely new game. Pawn to a5, preventing black from playing pawn to a5, rook to c8, and now bishop to d2. And here there was sort of a moment where Sam could have taken maybe the initiative with knight to b5. It's a very ugly move to handle because the bishop is attacked, the a7 pawn is attacked. You can't really play bishop back to b8 as the knight on b4 would hang. So you do have bishop c2, which looks interesting, but then queen a3, you actually self-pin. And there's not all that much black can play here. Best would be to just go knight to e4 and allow knight captures on d6, because if you play pawn to a6, which looks like a very natural move because you can trade and then the queen defends the knight, you actually can't do this. Captures, bishop to d2, and you can resign here. So knight b5, definitely an interesting move. Sam doesn't go for it. We have bishop to d2 first, and now Hans plays pawn to a6 to stop this nasty knight to b5 idea. But the wonderful thing is, and this is why we love chess, is that knight b5 is still the best move. Sam didn't play it. But yeah, I mean, what do you play? If you capture, you just mess up your pawn structure, and white's gonna win material back. And if you go for something like knight to c2, then again, white captures the strong bishop on d6, and white will have the advantage. But okay, after a6, we have pawn to g3. Sam doesn't go for this. We have queen to e7 and rook f to c1. Rook to c7, preparing to double up and also to defend that b7 pawn. Knight e5, we have rook f to c8 and queen to b2. knight to c2, going after the knight, and here Sam just captures it. The problem is you cannot avoid losing the exchange here, because even if this knight moves, then bishop a3 with the skewer, and then you have to give up the rook on c1. So it is actually best to capture on c2. We have bishop captures on c2, and now knight to g4, offering a trade of knights. Hans says, all right, but first bishop to e4, as my bishop on c2 is hanging. Knight captures on f6, and now g captures on f6. This is a very interesting decision from Hans, because queen captures is perfectly fine, but he actually decides to go after a kingside attack. So he wants lines in front of the king open. We have bishop to g4, attacking the rook, and just pawn to f5, bishop back to e2, and pawn to h5, preparing pawn to h4, but also willingly giving up a pawn, as he wants to play king g7 and start bringing the firepower over to the h file. Okay, bishop captures. It's really the best move. King to g7, bishop to d1, and rook to h8. Hans now doubling up on the h file, pawn to h4, and here rook to c6. And with bishop to e1, you can still sort of hold this, but after knight captures, or rather no, the knight captures on e4 is the better move. Bishop to e1 seems like a move you really want to play, because all sorts of sacrifices are looming, but after pawn to f4, it is possible to defend. Like e captures, and after bishop captures, g captures, queen captures, you lose on the spot, but you can avoid this and maybe somehow survive. It's really a bad position. So that's why knight captures on e4 is by far the better choice. F captures on e4, and now you have to play bishop to e1. But rook to b1 was played, and now Hans is completely winning. But believe it or not, Hans missed it. He played something similar. So try to find the idea that wins the game on the spot. So the move that wins on the spot, believe it or not, is bishop captures on g3. And Hans found a sacrifice, just not this one. He played rook captures on h4. But just to give you an example of why this is winning, f captures, now you capture on h4. Or if you're lazy to calculate, you just play rook g6. And there's no move that you can make here. And to the point where if king to h2, you can even sacrifice the queen, and it's a beautiful double rook checkmate. So that was also in the position. Hans played rook captures on h4 first, but now the position is manageable. G captures, queen captures on h4, king to f1, and bishop to g3. Okay, makes sense. If you capture, then queen to h1 check, and you quickly get checkmated. If king to e2, then just rook to f6, and there's no stopping checkmate. Whatever you play are getting checkmated. Even if you move the bishop to b4, just queen g2 check. And after king to e1, rook to f1 will be made. So whatever you play. But after bishop to g3, bishop to e1 was played. Now Sam finds the best defensive resources. We have rook to f6, tripling up on the f2 square, queen c2. Sam says, all right, you're not threatening anything. I'm just ready to start attacking your own king. We have queen to h1 check, king to e2, bishop, first queen to g2, now adding another attacker to the f2 pawn, king to d2, bishop captures on f2. And now you should play king to c1. King to c1 is actually the killer move. It looks crazy, because why would you allow rook to c6? But that's the key move. Rook to c6, and now you will defend with bishop c3. That's how you play it. But okay, after bishop captures on f2, bishop to e2 was played. Bishop captures on e3 check, and now king to d1. The only way to play, because if you capture, then queen to g5 is checkmate. Even that is in the position. So king to d1, and now queen to g1, followed by queen to c8. Here rook captures on b7, and Sam is still in the game. But he plays queen to c8, and now he's lost. But again, it's a very hard move to find, especially for Hans with 4 minutes on the clock. Even try pause the video and find a win for Hans here. It's not an easy one. It's bishop f2. And you're probably wondering, but isn't queen g4 check just solving everything? No, because after queen g4 check, you have rook g6. And now after you capture, rook captures, you're still going to pick up that bishop. And if king to d2, trying to defend with the king and the rook, e3 check. king d3, you pick up the bishop, and you're just up too many pawns. Even if rook captures on b7, it's not a problem. You're up 2 pawns, completely winning. But yeah, after queen to c8, a bishop to g5 was played. Hans finds the idea, only not instantly. He wants to bring the bishop over to h4 to attack, but now, of course, you're in time to defend. Rook captures on b7, and now the same idea no longer applies. So queen captures on d4, probably best. Hans goes for bishop to h4, now queen to g4 check. But now rook to g6 doesn't do anything because you just blunder a bishop. So after bishop g5, we have rook captures on b7, and now after bishop to h4, queen to g4 check, like we've said, and the queen trade. Queen captures on g4, bishop captures on g4, and now rook to f1, attacking the bishop, and bishop to e6, saying, okay, you can capture here, I'm going to capture on f7. We have rook captures on e1 with check, and now king to c2. Again, losing move. The move you have to play is king to d2, but chess is sometimes funny like that, and that is why we love chess. So what is the problem with king to c2? Again, even pause the video and try to spot this crazy maneuver. It's not the first thing that comes to mind. So congratulations to everyone for finding this. If you've managed to find this one, you are a master spotter of tactics. And if you just want to enjoy the show, it is a rook e2 check. Again, first move that comes to mind, but it is what happens next that counts. King to d1. Yes, you want to stop that pass pawn somehow, but now rook f2. You prevent captures on f7, so bishop captures on d5, and now pawn to e3. Bishop to c4, keeping an eye on the e2 square, and now rook to d2 check. The bishop covering e1, king to c1, and pawn to e2. So this was key. And now if you capture the rook, the pawn queens with check, so you have to capture the pawn, and now rook captures on e2. Would be also enough for black, so that's why rook captures on f7 was played. King to g6, and now you have to do it. The bishop captures on e2, rook captures on e2, and now rook to a7. Going after the a7 pawn, rook to e6 defending, and now the position is completely winning. Of course, you still have to come to terms with it as you've played for so long, but you're now just down a piece, and a couple of more moves were played. Nothing spectacular here, hardly worth the analysis. And yeah, after rook to c1 check, king b5, here Sam resigned as there is nothing more to be done here. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely done by Hans. These are the standings after all of these rounds have been played, 4 rounds. So Wesley still in the lead, followed by Fabiano Levon, and now also on 2.5 points, Hans, Moke, Niemann. I would like to thank Rocao Orithini, Gerard St. Pierre, The Word Weird, and Brazos Wally Chess Society for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.